Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to spring 2021 semester. We're going to wait a couple seconds and see how many people join on. So I'm going to go ahead in the meantime, just do a quick share screen so that everybody knows what we are going to be discussing today. I hope everybody's break went really well, and I am looking forward to the presentation today and to get feedback ultimately. So I hope everybody's doing well. Let's see. Good morning, everybody. I see everybody logging on to Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us today at 10 o'clock, first day of the semester. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Christine Ami. I am an associate professor in the School of Business and Social Sciences. I teach Indigenous themed and Indigenous research methods classes here at Diné College, as well as I am also the grant manager for the Navajo Cultural Arts Program. So today we are here and we're live on our Diné College Facebook feed, primarily because we are in the process of developing minors here at the college. And so we've been extremely fortunate to also find some backing with the American Indian College Fund for several of our minors. So I wanted to take some time today to go over a couple of different aspects of what a minor is. And specifically today, we're going to be focusing in on our Native American Studies minor. So if at any time that you guys feel that you have something that you wanted to add, any input, anything at all in terms of the development of this minor or any of the minors that we're going to be visiting over the next 4 Mondays throughout January, please include it in the Zoom feed comment section, as well as on our Diné College comment section of the live feed that's going on. And then at the end, I once again will be encouraging everybody to please submit a survey. I have the survey link here, but I'll also include it in all of our Zoom rooms and as well as on the links provided for any of the live feeds that we have going on. So without further ado, I wanted to go ahead and take a look at what we're going to be looking at and covering today. And it's a relatively short presentation, so I hope that you guys don't mind the PowerPoint format. And also, my sons are in the background watching dinosaur trains. So if you hear some random Tyrannosaurus Rex noises, that's what's going on over here. Today, we're going to be covering what is a minor, what is it going to look like, why should Diné College students consider minors, what are the minor programs that are currently in development right now and that are being prepped for fall 2021 registration. And then we're specifically going to be focusing in on what is a Native American Studies minor, what is the areas of content specialization. So why do we need this? How does the NSA minor satisfy the needs of that content specialization that's necessary, that a lot of people believe is necessary in today's world? And what are some of the tenets of the NAS minor requirements? This is going to be taking a look at, our faculty. This is going to be taking a look at some of the degree course requirements that we're working with. Nothing is solidified, which is why that very endpoint is so important for us at this stage right now. We are currently in the community input stage, and we really want to get some feedback. So if you think of anything along the way throughout this presentation, as I said before, please don't feel afraid or hesitant to comment, email it, or put it in the survey. So when we take a look at minors, right, this is the first thing that we want to look at. The question becomes, what is a minor? We currently do not have a minor system here at Diné College, and so that's why we're really excited, so many of the faculty, people, and administration and students to get minors. And so a minor is a secondary academic discipline in addition to your major. So you could be major in biology, but you want a credentialing in another area as well before you leave the institution, a 4-year institution with your bachelor's degree. It's a secondary academic concentration. Typically, they are ranging between 18 to 26 credits in addition to the minor. And we're going to talk about that in just one second, because we also want to make sure that these minors are attainable within not just a time period, but also in terms of financial, right? Our financial capabilities of being able to attain can work with these additional credits. So when we look at minors, right, and we take a look at why students should consider minors, if a student has multiple interests, right, even interests that don't directly relate or connect to the main discipline that they're studying, they can go ahead and minor in this field. And we see this multiple times in other institutions where you take two different types of concentrations and you have interests in both of them, and you find that maybe in the future you might be able to bring them together, but for right now you just really looking to get credentialing in these areas, or you're just interested in it. So that's one of the reasons why people decide on a major, that they're just really interested in this other topic, and so they want to minor in it. Myself, going through my bachelor's program, I was minoring in international studies as well as Native American studies. And so those are just the different areas of interest that I had, in addition to going through second language pedagogy and Spanish language immersion, which was my BA, my focus at that time. Another reason why students might be interested in taking a look at the minor system is if they really want to focus on a localized concentration within their major discipline, they can minor in another field and bring those two together and really start to look at those areas. When I was taking a look at international studies, I was looking at second language acquisition throughout the world and how people were going through those areas. And I was specifically looking at Spanish second language acquisition. And so those are the things that I really wanted to bring together. Take these very localized and bring it globally, and vice versa. If you have a very global major discipline and you want to localize it, you can choose a minor to do that. Another reason is if a student wants additional credentialing to strengthen their academic profile, they can minor in another field. This is great, and this is one of the things that we're going to take a look at, and how useful, for example, the Native American Studies minor will be in terms of providing that additional credentialing. And so those are the things that we want to stress when, why students might want to think about minoring in another field. So when we take a look at the minors that are currently in development, these are the 4 minors that I'm overseeing at the moment. Not to say that there aren't others coming, but as of right now, these are the ones that we're taking a look at. And today we're going to focus on the Native American Studies minor. Often you'll see it in other institutions, the American Indian Studies discipline, and you'll see it constantly referenced in this PowerPoint. And once we do get this up on the books in terms of being able to register for these classes, we will be looking at the prefix of NAS for Native American Studies. In addition to that minor, we have 3 other minors, which I'm excited to say have been supported through the American Indian College Fund Curriculum Development Program. So we have a grant to help assist us in terms of data collection and, developing advisory committees and putting together these 3 additional minors. One is going to be the Navajo silversmithing minor that's going to be housed in the School of Arts, Humanities, and English. And this particular minor will be going over next Monday. So make sure that you jump back so you can take a look at the requirements and some of the, taking a look at the rationale for why this minor should exist here at Diné College. We're also going to be having a minor in Navajo weaving. That's also going to be housed in the School of Arts, Humanities, and English. So we're definitely looking forward to that as well. We'll be dedicating our 3rd Monday in this series to really looking at the details and the specifications of those areas. And then our 4th minor that we're going to be looking at in January is going to be our Navajo Cultural Arts minor. Currently, we have a certificate, but now we're looking at it in terms of a minor. How do we bring them together so you can complete a BA degree, a BS degree, a BF degree, BFA degree, and then also have this minor alongside. So we have these 4 minors that are currently in development, and we are looking forward for several more to join this group as well. So when we take a look at the Native American Studies minor, a lot of people perhaps may have not heard of it, and I'm just going to give you a brief little story of how I became interested and immersed into the Native American Studies field. I mean, even growing up, Native American topics, Native American themes, Native American people were left out of the general discussion. Anything to doing with education, politics, law, language, you name it, across the board. And so when I was growing up, there was just never that access. We very much were ingrained in Navajo traditions and in Navajo language, but understanding how that we were not isolated, that there were other indigenous populations out there, that there were other languages out there, that there's a global, right, indigenous and indigeneity that we have throughout the world. That was something that was very much void and suppressed and erased. And so when we take a look at the Native American Studies minor, when I started to take a look at it, I really was interested in seeing how, the various educational realms that I was experiencing, as well as my lived realities, impacted, right, my immediate world. And so the Native American Studies minors and classes that I was able to take help me to look at things from a global indigenous perspective, as well as an American hemispheric perspective. And so I was able to start taking our lived realities as Navajo people and linking them and creating dialogue, as well as taking a look at how do we distinguish ourselves from other indigenous communities throughout the world. So that's how I joined Native American Studies train, and so I kind of have never looked back since then, and I since have gotten a PhD in that particular field. So that's what I take a look at. And when I'm working with Native American Studies, and as I will talk with some of my colleagues as well, um, I work specifically in decolonial studies. I take a look at animal studies and how they relate to indigenous peoples throughout the hemisphere of the Americas. And so those are my particular interests. And my dissertation is really focusing on how do we reintegrate, right, human and non-human relationships and towards building a better future. And so those are the things that we take to look at when we go into Native American studies, but it's not the only thing. When we look at Native American studies, what we're really trying to do is to break down the homogenizing standpoints of the Indians. And I know that's really technical, jargony talk for looking at how indigenous peoples have been put into this square block and identified as just one group of people. We've seen this in the political realm during our voting this past year, right, as labeled as something else. And so what we're trying to do is really to open up that homogenizing, that force that's political, right, legal, termination, assimilation force that's put us all into one block, and to open that up, right? And so we're looking at the diversity of indigenous populations. We're looking at and everything from global spheres to local and very regionalized diversity. And so we're also really keen in bringing into dialogue various traditional knowledge systems. This includes, everything from native sciences to understanding, right, education systems, and how the education system that we are working in right now is, built with this assimilation and termination. So how do we work within those? When do we deconstruct them? And how do we break free and build and rebuild our own? We also take a look at the tensions and relationships between Native American communities. This includes identity politics. It includes really taking a look at government labels, the roles of geography, even those self-imposed identity politics that we put in, urban relationships with reservation relationships. Those types of tensions and relationships are really things that we start to highlight. We look at relationship between the Western education system and Native Americans as a whole, taking a look at everything from, pre-contact, what we call pre-contact, to assimilation roles of education termination, the erasure that took place, as well as the self-determination era that we're in right now, in which we're getting to define what we are considering as part of our and the modes of education that can take place. We're also taking a look at Western political structures and Native Americans, once again, following that assimilation, termination, erasure, and self-determination, but taking a look at, pre-contact and looking at what's going on now. Where are the areas of internal colonization? Where are the subjugations coming from? Are they coming from within? Are they coming from without? Those are the types of dialogues and tribal critical thinking that we go through in our classes. So when we take a look at a Native American Studies minor, ultimately what we're looking for here at Diné College is seeking a discipline that's going to help to broaden and connect and dialogue our Navajo realities, right, to larger Indigenous experiences. We're so fortunate here at Diné College to be grounded within our Diné educational philosophy of that we have kind of like a foot up when we start taking a look at Native American studies, because we have this very grounded lived reality and experiences that now we get a chance to broaden those and start to dialogue with that. So it's a way to kind of, understand our own experiences and dialogue them with the experiences of others. It's a very interdisciplinary field, meaning that we can work with multiple schools, we can work with everything from language and linguistics, education, STEM, any of the social sciences and the humanities. It's something that's very much applicable to all of these different types of fields that already exist here at Diné College. So the foreground is kind of already there. So here's the nitty gritty, and this is really what we're trying to take a look at and work through within our advisory teams, as well as to get community input. What is the breakdown in terms of the minor and what it would include for students to actually become credentialed and graduate with this Native American Studies minor. So as of right now, we're looking for the development of the NAS prefix, as you guys can see right here. One of the classes that is currently in development is our Native American Studies Introduction to Native American Studies, which is a broad interdisciplinary look and understanding of various topics. So taking a look at language, taking a look at education, taking a look at Native sciences, taking a look at anthropology and culture and politics. And so it's very much a general introductory class to what Native American Studies is. Another class that we're also looking at as a core requirement would be our colonization ethnopolitics of Americas. This is really taking a look at that transition period between pre-contact and contact, and looking at the various colonization eras and movements that we've had throughout the centuries, and specifically looking up into, well, how does politics play into this, and looking at legal systems all the way up into today's realm. So once again, it's a general survey, but it's really much focused on the various areas of colonization. Then we follow up with the class that we already have in our course offerings, which is one of the classes that I teach, and I really enjoy this class. It's our Decolonization and Indigenous Resilience class. This class allows us to take a look at not just the varying levels of colonization, but how do we start talking about resiliency and self-determination. And it's a class about really self-analyzation and taking a look at our own lived experiences in order to start changing society by changing ourselves. So those are the three core requirements that we're taking a look at right now in terms of what would be required. One thing that we are looking at right now is a option for a $3.99 special topics class. I'm going to be talking about some of my colleagues in just a second, but each one of us who has an NAS doctorate has the different focus areas. And so what we were thinking is that it would be nice to open up a special topics class that students would be able to take. For example, I love butchering and I love animal studies. One of the special topics that I would have at this 300 level would be a class on the Indigenous butchering techniques of the Americas. And so that would be a special topics class that we would offer, once every 2 years. So there's that. I know that Dr. Lerma focuses in tremendously on political science, so he may have some classes that he's specifically interested in teaching at that level. Dr. Gregory Redhouse is really interested in warfare and politics and government systems and business, and so those would be different opportunities that students would have in order to explore these areas, these local areas that we are credentialed in, and we would be able to share our expertise in that arena. There's also the avenue of research, is learning how to conduct Indigenous research through tribalized lens, which is already a class that we have on the books. It's once again, one of my favorite classes. That's definitely a critical thinking class, but at the end of this class, you actually leave with an IRB proposal that's written from an Indigenous research methods perspective. So what we're taking a look at here are 4 classes that would be in these core requirements for a Native American Studies minor. In addition to that, there would be 9 additional hours that could be completed in an inter-school, interdisciplinary fashion. And this is really what's going to allow students to dialogue their Gen Ed degree checklist with the minors. So it's not taking necessarily too much extra time, but allowing for students to sorry, allowing for students to use their Gen Ed electives in a manner that helps them to also build up their minors as well. And so we have a range of different classes. And, you know, the School of Arts and Humanities, they have all of these cultural arts classes. They have these American Indian history classes, which are wonderful. We have our English Native American lit classes, which are also wonderful classes. They just help to build up that interdisciplinary approach that's needed for approaching topics through a Native American studies lens. In our School of Diné Studies and Education, we have all these wonderful Indigenous education classes that we're looking to include as possible electives, as well as higher level Navajo language classes and cultural arts classes, as well as our Navajo studies classes that would just add to that concept of how do we take our localized experience and now dialogue it with a larger, broader concept of what global indigeneity entails. And then we have STEM, our STEM classes, which we're looking at public health. It already does a wonderful job reaching out to our Native American communities. But how do we dialogue even more when we start taking a look at STEM and Native sciences, the role of ethics and research? This would be something that would be extremely applicable to those arenas as well. So when we take a look at the total credit hours, we're looking at a 21 credit hour to 23, depending on if you're taking some classes that are 4 credit classes, that may put you up just a little bit. In terms of faculty, we already have 3 faculty here on campus in our School of Business and Social Sciences that hold either a PhD in American Indian Studies or Native American Studies. Our dean holds a PhD in American Indian Studies from the U of A, same with Dr. Gregory Redhouse, and then myself from the University of California, Davis. So in terms of credentialing, we have the individuals here, we have the knowledge holders here. It's really an easy step into bringing this minor into light here at our institute. Ultimately, when we take a look at this, this minor program, we're trying to complement, right, our growing college. We have now transitioned into a 4-year institute. And so taking a look at Diné College's baccalaureate programs, we're looking to expand them, to strengthen their tribal critical thinking skills, to provide space for tribal perspectives. And so when we are really focusing on that, these are just some of the possibilities that you could take a look at in terms of your minors. So if you're a psychology major and you decided you're going to study, complete a minor in Native American Studies, you may want to focus in, right, and broaden your arena of the study of holistic well-being values and of the cultural arts, right? You may want to dialogue them with other areas. You also, if you're a public health major and you want to dialogue and work with Native American Studies minor, you're looking at the experience of evaluating varying levels of trauma. We can take a look at historical trauma and various resiliency factors that are going to help broaden and strengthen that overall degree program. Our biological majors are BS in biology, if we combine a Native American Studies minor, we're looking at, right, the study of Native science since time immemorial, right? Where are the erasure components? How do we bring them in? How do we dialogue? How do we conduct research? Those are the types of things that when we look at how we can bring these two different disciplines in together into dialogue. And then of course we have our Diné Studies minor here, major here at the college. And if we strengthen that with a Native American Studies minor, we're looking at dialogue between local, hemispheric, and global Indigenous experiences with what's already provided here at the college. So like I said, ultimately this minor is here to broaden our overall experiences and take a look and see how we can dialogue with other Indigenous realities that are going on throughout the world. And so I'm hoping that you guys will take the time today and jump onto SurveyMonkey. Here's the link. I'm also going to post it below in our comments. If you guys can jump on, take this survey and provide feedback. What we're looking for is if you also believe that there is, a general need for this type of discipline and perspective here at our college. Would you be interested? What classes would you be interested in? If there were any changes that you would make to the core requirements, what would be some of those requirements that you would include? And so our job right now is we're in the community input stage. So any information that you would be able to provide would be much appreciated, definitely as our advisory team moves forward with the development of this minor. So I wanted to say thank you guys for joining me. I know it was a really quick layout, but I'll be providing any supplemental documents. And as we go along, we really just wanted to make sure that our steps are as transparent as possible so that we can continue to get community feedback throughout the next stages. But our hope is to have these 4 minors up and ready to rock and roll for fall 2021 enrollment. Next week, we're going to be taking a look at our Navajo silversmithing minor. I'll be going over the resources that we have, the resources that we need, and ultimately why this minor would be important to students here at Diné College. So I hope that everybody is doing well. As I said, thank you very much for joining us today. If you have any questions, please shoot us an email. You can also contact me at cmami, A-M-I, at dinecollege.edu. And of course, there's the survey. So if you could please continue to complete those community survey inputs, I'd appreciate it. You guys have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week when we start exploring the possibilities and opportunities of a Native American the Navajo silversmithing minor. Have a great